Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day today in this nice, cool weather we're having here in Houston, Texas. That's a little sarcasm there. Hey guys, thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to have some great education getting going for you here in just a second. Want to thank everybody for joining us again. And, we've been really doing some great workshops, learning about running comps and about meeting with our sellers and negotiating and doing all that stuff, estimating repairs. And we had PropStream on a couple months ago, and we talked about lead generation, and Burton showed us how to go through all their systems and just how easy they've made it for us to generate leads and do all that kind of good stuff that we need to do, talking about skip tracing and all that stuff. And today we're going to be just taking that education even farther from that and going into running comps. Now that PropStream has gotten that feature back in their system for us, it's important that we learn how to run comps the correct way, not using all the free nonsense that's out there, but being able to actually get good comps so we can have good ARVs on our deals, because as we all know, that's where every good deal starts, is being able to get a good ARV to start that evaluation of that property. So but we have a little change up today though. Burton was not able to make it on today, so he's got Chris in his place today. And so we're going to have Chris here, and Chris is going to be going through all this with us. And we want to thank you so much for joining us, Chris, and jumping in there at the last minute, because this was kind of a surprise. Burton unexpectedly had to deal with some stuff. And so Chris has been kind enough to join us. And, he's going to walk us through some of the new features that you guys have got going on out there that they've added to what they've already got, which is a very positive. And then we're going to jump into some comps. We've sent him some addresses so we can pull up comps here locally to really give you guys a really good idea of how to go out there and do this and really get some good information. And as always, we're always here to help you guys. If you're not sure, we'll help guide you in your negotiations and your comps or whatever we need to do. But with all that being said, I don't want to waste a lot of time. I want to get Chris going here because he's got a lot of great information for you guys. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Chris, and we'll see you at the end. And guys, write down questions, get your questions in. And now's the time. I mean, we've got the expert here. We've got the guy that knows how to do this stuff, that teaches this stuff. So now's the time to write down some questions and get some good answers, better than answers that you're going to get from me. So I'll let you take over, Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. And thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. And my favorite thing in the world is getting to talk about PropStream and show off PropStream and everything it can do. And yeah, it's very, very exciting. We had a recent update where we are able to pull back in a lot of MLS data, including failed and sold listings back into PropStream. So if you're living in a non-disclosure state like Texas, then having access to this information is essential to helping you pull your comps. You can do it from the MLS directly if you have direct access. But for those of us that don't have a license or can't afford direct access to the MLS, we have alternatives like PropStream. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the platform, maybe you missed the last presentation, PropStream is a lead generation tool for real estate professionals. Essentially, it can help you find sellers and buyers. You'll be able to search in your market, filter your results, and find those motivated leads. So today, what I want to do is show you some of our big updates that we had with the MLS changes. We actually introduced some new filters into the platform. So we have new filters that haven't been there before. And then I'm going to pull us into the comping section. And from there, we'll run comps live on a couple different properties. You'll learn the ins and outs of the comping tool on PropStream, and even how you can pull your own PDF report with the click of a button. So yeah, we got a lot of info to go through today. It should be a really fun presentation. And like Steve mentioned earlier, if you have any questions at all, just keep them coming. Okay, I love answering questions, and this is the perfect opportunity. I should know everything you're going to ask about. And if I don't, I'll find it out real soon for you. But without any further ado, let me go ahead and share with you PropStream. So like I said, PropStream is a lead generation tool, but beyond that, we've kind of expanded. That's what we started out as, right? A way to help you find leads and analyze your properties. But we've been in the business for 15 or 16 years now. I think we might be the oldest company that does this sort of work. And so in that time, we've been able to expand and add on new features and add in new data sets and create almost a one-stop shop, right? So you can generate your leads here, but then you can also skip trace your leads. You can market to them. And then, like I mentioned, you can analyze them, which includes running your comps and pulling your comp report. So I want to show you some of the new filters that we just came out with our MLS updates. So the first thing I'll do is I'll just search a market. So let's go ahead and search in Houston, Texas. And here are all the results we get for Houston. But if I go to my filter menu, if I come under quick list choices, you'll see we have failed listings back inside of PropStream. This is something we had to remove, but we've been able to add it back in. So we'll be able to show you any properties that were listed on the MLS, but then they failed to sell for one reason or another. Now, we don't have the info on why it failed to sell, but we do have the info that it was listed and that it didn't sell. So we'll have that failed listings for you as an option under quick list choices. But you'll also be able to find more filters under MLS status, right? And this is where you have our access to all of our different MLS filters, like our on market status and the MLS status date. But a brand new filter that we just introduced is listing type. And now you can specify anything that's listed for sale or for rent on the MLS, or by default, it'll just select any. Another new feature you'll find is under MLS status. Now we've had active and pending and contingent. We were able to add back in failed and sold. So you can search your market for any listings that have failed or that already sold. And by popular demand, this is a brand new filter that's never been inside of PropStream before. We have never listed. So you can find properties that have never been on the MLS. Right? And maybe offer an opportunity to change that. But now you can use any of these filters to help with your searches and with your lead generation on PropStream. So remember, on PropStream, it's as simple as searching your market, then applying filters to your search, and then saving your results. And here are all the liens in Houston, Texas. I can save these results into my account. And just like that, I was able to track down 3 or 5 new leads thanks to PropStream, right? And it can get, you can make your lists as generic as possible with PropStream or as niche as possible. You can go in and stack additional filters and then use this as a really powerful tool to help you find potential sellers or potential buyers. But these are the big new filter updates that we've introduced with our MLS status updates. So remember, listing type, for sale, for rent, or any. And then under MLS status, we'll have failed, sold, and never listed. And then of course, we have our other 7 categories. We have over 120 different filters across these 7 categories and over 18 quick list choices. So you have a lot of different options for helping you build your lead list and helping you generate those leads. And in 2022, I think it's important to try to use as many tools as possible to help with this task, especially tools that set you apart from other people in your area. And I think that's exactly what PropStream can do. But that's the first part of our big MLS update. And that's how the MLS update will impact your searching and your filtering. But that MLS update also has a huge impact on our ability to run comps. So inside of PropStream, we have a built-in comping tool. And I know there are other services out there. There are even free services that you can use, or maybe services that aren't necessarily built for comping, but they work for comping. But when it comes to PropStream, the tool that we've built here, it's meant for comping. And because of that, it's going to be as intuitive as we can make it, as user-friendly as possible, and it's going to help you find those properties that are best for your comp report. And I'm sure we're mostly familiar, but for anyone who's not so sure about what comping is exactly, well, it's short for comparables, and it's the process you take to determine a home valuation or an after repair value. But essentially, when you have a subject property, you're going to look at nearby properties that recently sold with similar characteristics, and you'll use those prices to help determine the price of your subject property. When you jump onto PropStream and you pull up a property, so I just searched this one right here, 2613 Milwaukee Street. You can pull up those property details. And from here, I can look at all of the different details that PropStream has on that property. I'll also have the ability to start running my comps. And our big MLS update is huge because you're able to determine what data set you want to use to run your comps on PropStream. And this is going to be really important for anyone in a non-disclosure state, such as Texas. In Texas, they're not allowed to show final sales prices on the public record. So typically you can run your comps using public record, but in Texas, those sales prices aren't available, which is where you'll need to use the MLS data. And the MLS data in PropStream, we are an estimate. I just want to let you know that, but we're estimated with 99% accuracy. As it turns out, the MLS boards do not want third parties to display the exact sales prices. So we developed our own proprietary algorithm, and we found a way so that we can still show you those MLS sales prices, but within 99% accuracy so that the MLS boards don't get mad at us. But here, before we jump into our comps, I just want to show you a few things on our details page that will help us pull our comps later. What's really essential for us to know right now is the property characteristics. So this is my subject property, but whatever property you may pull up, you'll notice below the photo, we'll have a quick summary of characteristics, including bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, lot size, and the year it was built. If you scroll down further, it'll also have this in even more detail below. But when it comes to running our comps, this is some of the data that we're really going to need, and it's important to be familiar with where to find it, right? PropStream makes it easy. We put it all in one spot for you right here at the top. And then over here at the right, where it says our property type, this is also going to be important for us. But now that I know the characteristics of this property, I can start running my comps. Because remember, when we run our comps, we're looking for nearby properties that recently sold with similar characteristics. So it's important for me to know these characteristics. And instead of having to go research on another site and then pull it into my comping tool, it's all right here in one place for me, right? I don't need to have 10 different logins or 15 different emails. I just log into PropStream, and with my single sign-on, I'm able to research my properties, find them, and run my comps. So from here, now that I know the characteristics, what we're going to do is jump into our comparables and nearby listings tool. And on this page, what we're going to have is access to choosing our data set for running the comps. We'll have filters that will help us make sure our comp properties are nearby with characteristics and recently sold. And then on the right side, we have a spreadsheet that shows us the comp results. Now, since we're pulling our comps in Houston, Texas right now, I can select both, but I could also just select MLS data and stick strictly to the MLS data sets. Now, if I go down below at my filters, you'll see we're going to automatically input some info for you. The first one is the date range, and this is referring to the sale date on these properties. So by default, we're going to enter in 1 year. So we're going to show you only properties that have sold within the last year. Now, of course, this is highly customizable, but you're not going to want to go too far back because the market 3 years ago is extremely different than the market today. So to use properties from 3 years ago to pull your comps may not be the best idea, but you can edit this date range as much as you'd like. It's all highly customizable. The second field that will automatically insert for you is square footage. And what we'll do is we'll look at the square footage of your subject property, and then we're going to subtract 20% and put it in the minimum, and then we'll add 20% and put it in the maximum. But this is also highly customizable. And then we're going to put a default distance, and we're going to default to 1/2 mile. But in this neighborhood, it looks like there may not be a lot of properties nearby that are matching these characteristics. So what's important to consider is that you may need to customize and change these filters a little bit. If you don't get enough results at 0.5 miles, let's expand our scope a little bit. Let's look within 2 miles, right? And if I just expand out a little bit within 2 miles of my subject property, now I have 50 comparables that I can use, that I can examine and start to use for my property evaluation. I could even, maybe let's just do 1 mile and see how many properties I get. Perfect. We're still up to 50 within 1 mile. So remember, you may need to expand your filters out, but that's okay. That's just the science of comping with PropStream. But now what I'm really able to do is go through the rest of these filters and fill out my property characteristics. And what it'll do is it'll narrow down the results on the right and make sure that the properties in my comp report have the same characteristics, right? You don't want to be comparing apples to oranges. You don't want to be comparing condos to mansions. You want to make sure that these are similar properties in the same neighborhood. So if I refer back up to the top, remember PropStream made it as easy as possible. We put all of the data right here for you. So the bedrooms on this building, there are 3. So if I just enter 3 into the bedroom category, now it's only going to show me properties that have exactly 3 bedrooms. Now you can do the same for the bathrooms. Hit 1 here and 1 here. And now it's going to narrow this list down. And now it's only showing me the 8 properties that sold within the last year that are within a mile that have exactly 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. And Frank, I could pull this comp report and use this as my comp report right here. Or I can get even more specific. Let's look at the year built. It only show me houses that were built around the same time period. We'll give maybe a 15-year leeway up and down. Square footage is automatically inserted. Then I can even look at lot size. And these have similar lots. Our next option that we'll have is a status. And by default, we're just going to select sold records. And that's because a lot of people, their preference when running comps is to use only sold. You want to have the final sales price as your comping price. But for some people, they will like to use active, pending, or contingent MLS records, right? So if there's something currently listed, they can see what it's being currently listed for. We can also look for failed records if you want to see something that's been listed but wasn't able to sell, to maybe give you an idea of a price point that's a little bit too high. We can look at anything that's sold already, like the default choice. And then, of course, the never listed, like we saw in the filter menu. Now, since we have the MLS sold estimates, we can use the final sale price, even if we're in a non-disclosure state where they're not allowed to display that. Then I have my distance of 1 mile. And then I'll have the option for property class and type. So if I go back to the top, I can see this is a single family residential. So let's select residential and then select single family. Right now I have my results on the right. What I can do now, and this is what I recommend everybody do, if I look over at the amount, I can sort by the amount And we'll notice that some of these are going to be rental prices, right? Unless they're selling this house for $1,100, I'm going to assume that these are listed on MLS as a rental. So what I need to do is I need to come through and make sure to deselect the rental properties. Because PropStream, what we're doing is we're calculating an average for you live. So actually, let me select all those again. If we look at the top above the spreadsheet, we have an average sales price. And this is a live calculation based on all of the sales prices here. This is essentially the home valuation that you'll determine and that you can give to the homeowner. Or you may need to adjust it depending on any differences between the homes. Right, but let me show you what happens as I start to deselect properties. So if I deselect all of the rental properties here and have only the properties that actually sold, now you'll see my average sale price reflects more accurately the sales price in that area. And for me personally, 3 is perfect for a comp report. You can decide if you need to up that or if you want to lower it, but it's up to your personal preference, right? How many that you want. You want to make sure you have enough to have an accurate and fair average, but maybe not too much, right? You want the report to be readable and for them to be able to get through all of the details. But that's comping on PropStream. And after going through my filters, narrowing down my results, I have these 3 comped properties that I can use for my home valuation. From here, now I need to share this info with the homeowner, right? I need to show them why their house is worth $199,000. And to do that, PropStream will let me instantly generate a PDF report with all of these details, which is pretty incredible. If I had to take this info myself and try to make my own PDF report, I don't know how long it would take me. But watch, by having these 3 records selected and clicking actions, then I can just click view comp report, right? So I guess it was 2 button clicks. Sorry, I said 1 click of a button. You click actions and view comp report. But after that, it'll produce this PDF for you. And it'll take all of this info about the comped properties right here. And all the important info about your subject property. And it'll compile it into a nice, easy to read PDF. So here's the subject property, the owner info, their current listing status, any public record sale info, and any MLS sale info. And down here, we'll see a box that says search criteria. This is essentially the filters that I entered to pull this comp report. So that homeowner, if they're reading through, they can see, okay, yeah, you're looking only for houses with the same exact bedrooms, same exact bathrooms. So it helps to illustrate and to help them visualize how you got that number. Because to just tell them you got a number isn't enough, right? They're going to want that evidence. They're going to want a report showing them why. If I scroll down further, we'll have the info on the subject property, then our lowest comped property, our highest, and the averages, plus all of the information below. Then a photo that shows the subject property and where it is in relation to other properties. And then the details and characteristics on each of those subject properties, right? So they'll have access to all of this. You can instantly pull this report. You can save it for your own records or maybe share it with a colleague. But what we see a lot with our user base is they pull this report and they give it to the homeowner. And they say, here is why your house is worth X amount. And that this really helps to educate them on why it might be worth more than they expect or less than they expect, because you can use this report to help support what you're saying. And one more pro tip I want to show you before we pull another comp property and we run some more comps. But when it comes to the data sets right here, or at least what we're able to see in our spreadsheet, right? We have subdivision, price per square footage, lot square footage. You may find that you don't need all of this data when you're running your comps. Well, at PropStream, we want to make everything customizable and we want to make sure that you're getting the data that you want. So if you come up to this cog icon, this little gear right here next to actions, you'll be able to customize the layout. So you can deselect certain columns, and you can even save custom layouts so that if you have, maybe you're running comps for commercial properties, and then you need a different set of data for comps for residential properties. Well, you could save multiple layouts and then quickly switch between them. So you can have your commercial layout and your residential, and then easily switch between them, and you don't have to deselect these every time. So for me, maybe I don't care about the subdivision as much, and whether or not a pool is present or multi-parcel. Maybe I don't need these 3 categories. So I'll just deselect those and hit apply. And now it's a little bit more cleaned up when I go through my data columns. The useless or the columns that I don't need have been removed. Here, there's one property that we were able to comp. So let me go ahead and pull up another one, and we'll go through that same process. Let's see, I think we're sticking to Texas. And here's something too that I really love about PropStream. We have something called a predictive search. And you'll recognize this. It's like when you go to Google and you start typing in a question on Google, and then it says, did you mean this or did you mean that? We do that same thing, but with property addresses. And it's fantastic for me, especially. Sometimes I don't know how to spell the address, or I'm not sure what the full address is, but you can start typing in the start, and then we'll suggest all of the addresses in our system that match. Right, so this is one of my favorite tools, or one of my favorite things about PropStream. It saves you a lot of time, and you'd be surprised how many properties you don't know how to spell. But here we go. Here's another property for us over in Texas. And if I go into the comping tool, so it does look like this one's in a way more rural area. Right, with this property here, when I pull up my comping tool and I start to look for properties nearby, I'm getting 0. So the first thing I'm going to need to do on this property is start to expand out my filters. Right, we're going to have to expand our distance out and maybe change our default square footage. Perfect. With this one, it's looking like a very rural neighborhood in Texas. So let's try to expand one more time and see what results we are able to get. Yeah, for this Martin Luther King, we're having some issues, which may happen in your area. So you do just need to keep in mind that the more rural the area, the harder it might be to gather data from there. Because remember, we're, as much as we wish we could be, we can't be linked in to every single county, into every single data provider. It's just not feasible at where we're at with tech at this point in time. So we're not linked directly into every county. We're aggregating this data on a massive scale. So in a more rural area like this, you may be running into problems with having less data available. But here, let me pull up another example property that they sent over for me. Perfect. Here's another one for us in Houston. We have our details. Now let's run into our comps. Now we'll have the access for public record and MLS in both. So last time I ran it using only MLS data, specifically because we're in Houston. But let me go ahead and try running this one using both. And you'll notice that when I select both as our type of data set, that over here on the right-hand side in our spreadsheet, I get 2 different colors for my results. And that those colors correlate with the data set. So you notice if I have public record selected, everything's green because it's all public record information. Then if I have MLS selected, everything's blue because it's all MLS data. Then I can go to both and it'll have a mix of blue and green. And what's really great, if you are using the both option, you'll notice to protect your average, we want to make sure you don't accidentally select the same property twice. So to do that, we made it so when you select the alternative version, if you select the public record version for a property, it'll deselect the MLS version. And keep in mind, right, anything that's going to be sold on the MLS should also have a public record version of it. But it doesn't go the other way. Not everything that sells through public record is on MLS, right? Because there are private sales that occur without an agent. So some people prefer to use public record because they'll get the full picture and they'll even be able to see private sales. But public record is coming from the county. It's coming from the government. And I don't know the last time you went to the DMV, but it can be a little slower to update. So typically the MLS data, while you don't have the full picture, you don't get to see the private sales. This is going to be updated more frequently because it's not a government entity, it's a private entity. So for a lot of people, they choose to use both because you'll get a full picture of the sales that occurred, as well as the most recent information for those sales that were on MLS. But for this specific property, let's go ahead and try both for our comping. And now we're going to go and run through our filters and try to narrow these results down again. So coming back up to the top on this subject property, we have another 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom. So I can type 3 into the minimum box. And you'll find too, since we have a range, right? It's minimum to maximum. If I type just 3 into the minimum box, what it's going to do is it's going to show me all of the houses with 3 bedrooms or more because I left the maximum box blank. So this includes 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms, 6 bedrooms. If I want to make it exactly 3, I just got to make sure to enter the same number in each box. Same with the bathrooms. And now I've already narrowed down my list to 11 results. I can take it further. Let's try the square footage, which is auto entered, and maybe the year built. Right, and that actually narrowed it down to only 3 properties. Well, 2 properties and 1 has 2 entries. And honestly, that may be not enough for me to feel comfortable with my comp report. Because remember, we're pulling averages and we want the averages to be as fair and accurate as possible. So instead of expanding the years, let's maybe look in a larger distance. Right? And this is kind of the science of comps. It's not going to be perfect or exact each time, but on PropStream, you're going to find all the data and all the tools that you need to make the process as simple as possible. And like I mentioned, if you're in a non-disclosure state, it's hard to get access to the sales prices. You can if you have access to the MLS directly, but you need to be a licensed agent and that can be really expensive. So having access to these estimated sales prices with just a PropStream account, it's really powerful info and it's going to really help you pull comps in the Texas market. But here, let me expand my distance filter out. So now we're looking within a mile instead of half a mile. We'll look only for sold properties again. And we have a residential single family. Now we can choose to include or exclude multi-parcel sales. And what I typically will do is I will exclude those because I have found that in a multi-parcel sale, sometimes the properties are being sold at a discounted price because they're bundling 2 in 1 or multiple parcels in one sale. Now, while that's perfect and great for the person buying them, it's not great for our averages, right? Because we want something that's accurate to my situation, which is a single home. So for me personally, I will exclude those multi-parcel sales. Now you can think conversely though, if you are doing a multi-parcel sale yourself, you could include those, right? And then just check the price points for the multi-parcel sales to see if you're getting a fair price for yours. That's more of the power of PropStream, right? We have so much data. There's a lot of ways for you to use it to help you make informed decisions. But just like that, I've been able to pull up that property and filter through to find 5 results for my comp report. Now, if I wanted to, I could actually view the details of these individual properties if I want to vet them even more before saving my comp report. I can also save these properties if I wanted to not just get them as a PDF report. I can export this as an Excel file or as a CSV file. So I can easily save it to my computer or import it into a third-party system. I can also add these properties to a list in my account just to monitor them, or I can save my comps. And what Save Comps does is it saves all my filters. So if I'm working on a comp report and then maybe I have to go grab dinner, or I just need to log off for the night and pick up where I left off later, I can do that really easily with PropStream. I can just save my filters in place and then come back and pick up right where I left off. But now that I've narrowed my results, I can produce that PDF report. And you may notice this second time it was a little bit faster than the first time, right? Because I'm not showing you as much and I'm going through it a little bit quickly. Once you're comfortable with this tool, you'll find yourself pulling comp reports in less than 5 minutes, right? Someone will ask you, what's the valuation on that property? Like, okay, just give me a second. You can jump onto PropStream and generate that report in no time. Something that historically would have taken a lot of research and kind of a scavenger hunt going to point A and point B and point C and finding this data. Now you can just do it all here in this one platform. And like I said, we have those MLS estimated prices. So these prices are going to be extremely helpful in those non-disclosure states. But here, I think I have one more property that I'd love to pull. Oh, and I do have a comment I didn't notice until now. We are looking at the wrong Martin Luther King address earlier, which is great. We'll pull that address back up too, and we'll try running comps on that one. And we'll see if the other Martin Luther King address is in a more populated area for us. Here we go, 2210 Ansbury. And you will notice when you do an exact address search, like I just did, we will pull you to a page where we'll just show you the 100 closest neighbors, right? The nearby listings. And remember, comping does need to be nearby neighbors, but they need to be recently sold and have similar characteristics. But by showing you this info here, we're just giving you the chance to find other opportunities, right? We know it's easier to manage properties that are close by. And now you can look at the 100 closest properties to your subject property to see if there is anything that is also worth pursuing. You'll notice next to nearby listings, we'll show you 150 properties nearby that are listed with the MLS. We'll show you 5 or the nearby pre-foreclosures. And in this case, there are 5 of them. And then nearby foreclosures as well. So PropStream, like I said, you can generate your leads. You can run your reports and get your rehab analysis or get your comp report. But then we also have little features like this to help you find those additional opportunities. Here, let me pull open this property. And here we see the beds and we see the baths and the square footage. So let's go ahead and dive right into comping. We'll select just an MLS data set. We'll do our 3 bedrooms, our 1 bathroom. And maybe we'll increase our distance to 1 mile. And just after entering 3 filters, we have ourselves 18 different properties we can use for this comp report. right? So let's narrow this down a little bit more. For me, 18 is a little bit too much. I'm going to aim for 3 to 5 properties on mine. So let's check the property. We have a single family residential. And see, it was built in 57. So maybe I'll do 1950 to 1965. Right. And so before I talked about what you need to do if you've entered in your filters and you have too few results, right? Sometimes you enter in all your filters and you'll have 0 results on the right. So in that case, you need to expand your filters, right? And you need to widen your scope and you'll find more results. But here we have the opposite, where I've entered in all of my filters and I have 16 properties that match these filters. So instead of expanding my results, in this case, I'm going to want to focus in and try to narrow this down a little bit more. So let's try a lot size because we don't have one in yet. And that did how that narrowed us down to 12. But now what I can do is start taking some of these filters in these ranges and making them a little bit smaller. So let's say 1955 to 1960. And maybe we'll make the square footage on the property a little bit closer to the actual square footage. Now, this is actually a good situation to find yourself in because what's happening is the properties I'm finding are more and more similar. So my final average sale price that I'm developing, that's going to be more accurate to the final sales price. You find it's not a perfect science, right? And sometimes you may be running comps and your subject property has 4 bedrooms and 1 bath, but it's only because they added an additional bedroom. Maybe every other property in that neighborhood only has 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. So you wouldn't run your comps and only look for the 4 bedrooms when they don't exist. You would include the 3 bedrooms on your report, but then when you give the home valuation to the homeowner, you would just adjust the price. And you'd say, okay, well, for these homes, they all have 3 bedrooms, but yours has 4. So instead of offering you 241, I need to offer you 260. Or what a lot of our pro users will do, we also calculate an average price per square footage. So if you don't want to use the average sale price here, you can take the average price per square footage and then multiply it by the square footage that we have up here. And then that will get you something that's a little more accurate per your specific subject property. But here, it looks like I've been able to narrow this down as I've taken my results or taken in my filters and gone more and more specific. So remember, let's go ahead and look at the amounts just to double check. And here we go. My first 3 amounts are showing me rental prices. So let me just deselect that. And we can see that actually really helped my average. When I had those selected, we're only looking at 241,000. But to be more accurate, the average sales price for a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in this area for the last year is $421,000. Now I can hit actions, view comp report, and we can go ahead and generate that PDF comp report. Well, you'll notice here as well, there's a little camera icon over this one property. Now, when a property has the photos available, you'll be able to review them by clicking on that camera icon. We'll also take those photos and we'll be able to include them on our final report. So you'll see the photos pulled into the comp report. But that's only when the property has the photos available, which isn't always the case. Oh, and one thing about the map as well, we do have, you'll notice there's a little legend at the bottom, and we actually color code the properties based on their sales situation. And right now it looks like we don't have any unique sales, but let's say one of these numbers was highlighted with green, then that would be showing me that property number 1 was a cash sale. So there is some color coding going on with our map down here. But here, let me see if I can pull up. Let's go back to our Martin Luther King address. And let's see if we can find the right one, because it looks like I pulled us into the wrong market in Texas. So we're looking for Baytown, Texas. Longview, West Point, Chipley. There are a lot of streets in the United States that is named after this. Baytown, Texas. Perfect. Here we are with the correct address this time. If I pull up that property and we go into comps and nearby listings. Now here's a unique one, and this is something that you're not going to see very often, but it does happen because you got to consider the way that data is aggregated in 2022. But with this property specifically, we're seeing a situation where that county or that tax assessor, the people who are reporting those characteristics, they've reported those characteristics incorrectly, and they haven't reported a bed, bathroom, or a year build count. So in this situation, what we'll actually ask any user to do is to contact our team, right? Because we want to know about it. We want to go into that market and we want to fix it to make sure that the data is standardized and that you're able to see everything that you need to see. So here's one in Baytown, but specifically it's going to be difficult for us to run our comps without these characteristics available. Now, we do ask if you're using PropStream and in the rare chance that you encounter a situation like this, send us an email. Send us all of the details and we'll go in and we'll fix that property and try to fix the data that's coming through from that specific area. Because it just may be this one property that didn't report it properly, or it could be properties in that area and it could be something wrong with how they're recording their data, right? But it looks like other properties nearby are including it. So luckily it's not something larger with the entire county, but with that one specific property. But to run my comps, it's going to be essential to know those beds and bathrooms. So unfortunately for the Martin Luther King Jr. address right here. Oops, not in Tennessee, but that one's going to be difficult to run our comps on without that information. You will find that there are generalized comps inside of PropStream. So when you open a property in our summary page, you will get generalized comps. And in a situation like with that previous address, you can use the generalized comps as a basis and as a foundation. But like we said before, the tool is really helpful and it's incredible in helping people to pull their comp reports, because you're going to have, I mean, the algorithm can do what it can to review the properties and pull in the right ones for this average. But there's a reason why there's still people in this industry, right? And it really requires a person to go through those properties and to assemble that comp report to make it as fair and accurate as possible, which is why we have the generalized comping right here. But you're really going to want to stick to our comping tool and the ability to choose between your data sets. But for us specifically, if we're working in a non-disclosure state, these estimated MLS sales prices are going to be essential, because those non-disclosure states won't show me the public record sales price. But that's essentially comping on PropStream. And thank you so much for sending me those properties. They really kept me on my toes, and they really gave great examples for different situations that someone might encounter while comping on PropStream, right? It wasn't the, here's the perfect example. Here's every different example of what you might encounter and what you can do to still get that info. But I really appreciated being here. And if anyone has any questions at all, I would love to field any questions about PropStream, about comping, Or I guess just any questions in general. Surprise me.
Well, I've got a few things for you.
Okay, perfect, perfect.
First off, that was really good. I mean, I think everybody can really see the value here, and I've been taking some notes myself because as you're going through this and things that I try to teach people as well, especially when you're running comps, because it's very important that we still go out and know the neighborhoods that our subject properties are in, because when we start going out farther distances, and I know all these properties because I've ran comps on these properties over the past couple of days because people have sent them to me.
Yeah.
and I do have access to MLS, so I run everything on MLS. But one of them, and I don't remember which property it was. I think it was Milwaukee. The one on Milwaukee, that was kind of a tricky one because the way that area sets up, because I know that area very well. I've worked that area for many years. When you go out a little bit farther, and I think the person that sent this to me, that's how they comped it. It's an area where there's very different neighborhoods very close together, and there's a couple of neighborhoods that everybody pulls the comps in, where there's been lots of redevelopment, lots of rehabs going on over the past number of years, and everybody wants to pull that great data because it's very good. But if you're not in Lendell Park or Ryan, and you're in one of the other areas around it, those comps are totally bad for that. So but my point to that is, for everybody out there that's listening, is that's why I preach so much, and it's so important that we go out and learn our neighborhoods. We can't just pull our comps because we see something, or somebody sends something to us. If we don't know the area, we don't know the neighborhoods, it's very difficult for us to know if we're getting accurate numbers when someone sends them to us. One of the things that I've always been very good at, and one of the things I did from the very beginning when I started in this business, was I got out and I drove and I learned neighborhoods. I learned areas of town. Chris, I don't know if you've ever been here to the greater Houston area, but it's big. You've got lots of square footage, lots of square miles. and so areas are very different, and neighborhoods. I had somebody that I met at I was doing a class yesterday, and he had a property that he sent me, says, "Man, I've got this one for sale, and maybe you'll want this one." And as I pulled the comps, his numbers were way different than mine. And so I asked him, I said, are you pulling your comps in this neighborhood next to you where all the houses were built in 2015, 18, all in that area, and they're all brick homes, they're very nice, because that's the numbers you're giving me are for that neighborhood, because your neighborhood, there's no way this house will ever sell for that much, no matter what I do to this house. and I think I hurt the guy's feelings. That wasn't my intention, but I was just being honest with him that you don't know. I mean, and this, you own the property. I hope you've gone out and looked at these things, because based on the information you're giving me, you haven't even been to your own property and seen this. And I see that a lot nowadays. So I always want to make a good point of that, because the way that you were doing the comps, I think we were pulling up some pretty good, accurate numbers, and I really like the value of what this is going to be doing for everybody that takes part in this and learns this. And that's also why I'm here to help any of our members or anybody that's joining in with us or watches this. Send them to me so I can help make sure we're in the right neighborhoods. And then that's how we really start to get accurate numbers. And that's really what's going to really help us tremendously moving forward. So that was one of the comments I needed to say there about that.
Well,
Angie.
Yeah, and to that point, it's that human touch, right?
Oh yeah,
we have
without
different
a doubt.
places, where you can find, the computer will give you some averages, but the computer doesn't know that those neighborhoods are vastly different. Right? And
Exactly.
that's why we got to have that human touch to come in and make sure so that your report's fair.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, because if you put both those that knowledge of both of them together, you're going to get very accurate numbers. And the great thing about this also is for anybody that's newer that's doing this, this is you start doing this, and then we have conversations with you as well, and you get out and learn your neighborhoods. You're really going to refine your skills in being able to run your numbers correctly, and that's what's going to lead to getting good deals and more deals, without a doubt.
Yeah.
So Angie, do we have any
Exactly.
questions while I'm sitting here chattering?
We did not get anybody put any questions in. However, I do want to remind everybody, and I put it in the comments, that we do have a 7-day free trial for PropStream that is on our resource page. It is also in all of our emails that go out, and it'll be linked specifically in the replay that goes out tomorrow.
Gosh, I was going to say that too.
Me too.
Wow, I guess Angie beat us to the punch on that one.
Oh, dang.
And another thing I just want to point out to everybody is that it's really important that when I'm running my comps, even when I'm running on MLS, it's really important to try and get at least 3 comps. We're doing some classes with realtors right now and teaching realtors about investing and how investors think, having some very successful classes doing that. And one of the things that we really try and teach is, yes, we have to have those 3 properties for our comps. That's how we're going to come up with our number. But it's also very important to look at what is pending out there. And then, I know everybody said just look at sold, but it's also very, very important to see what your active listings are. Because when you go to sell this property, that's your competition. Going in and looking at what those properties look like, looking at what the updates they've done to them, or if they haven't done any updates at all, this really can help guide you in the rehab that you're doing on that property that you've got, to help you maybe do something a little bit nicer that's not going to cost you anymore. Maybe get you to list that property a little bit more accurate to get that property sold fast. Remember, as an investor, it's more important to sell that property quickly than necessarily getting the highest price you can for it. We have always been under the belief and always practiced where it's rare when we try and just max out our number on that sales price. We try to do a much better job on the rehab, come in with a very conservative yet good price, and we let our buyers drive our prices up. We've been doing that for years, even before this little crazy time frame we had over the past year happened, which is gone now. We still have always practiced that, and so it's very important to look at all that stuff. Look at all the different records, and the more you do it, you can go through this stuff really quickly. It doesn't take hours and hours to go through this stuff. When I'm running my comps and looking at properties, I can do this in 5 or 10 minutes. It doesn't take me long to have an accurate number and know exactly the direction I'm going right out of the gate. So that's what we've got for today, guys. This was really good. I picked up a lot of things on this. I hope that everybody's going to get out there and really, like I say, you've got a 7-day free trial with PropStream. We've been pushing that out to everybody. Go check this out. And like I keep telling you guys, and like Chris already said, if you guys have a question, guess what? Pick up the phone and call these guys. They actually answer the phone. And,
right? Yeah.
And I've been saying it at our meetings. Technology companies don't do that, and these guys do. So it's really helpful. Because guess what? We have questions. I have questions. Angie has questions. Susan has questions. We pick up the phone and call these guys. We send them an email. Boom, they answer right back. And it's really been a very helpful tool that we've added, that we're using. We're definitely using PropStream, and so we just want to try and give you guys the best information, the best tools for you to use, and we think this is definitely one of them. So Chris, thank you so much for stepping in at the last minute.
No problem.
It was a great presentation. Got a lot of information out of it. I really was able to finally see how the comp works. And with some of these new filters, with the failed listings, the sold, the never listed, I mean, those are some really cool
Yeah.
tools, really cool tools. And we're definitely going to be, I'll personally be going in there and playing with that stuff myself. So, and seeing what we can do to help, generate more leads for us. Cause hey, guess what? We're still investing. We're still out there doing this stuff all the time as well. So,
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Steve. And I love having every opportunity to show our new features, and we're always trying to do new updates and make the platform the best it can be. So if there's any new updates or anything, I'd love to come on and share them with you anytime you want.
oh yeah, definitely. Well, we'll definitely have you back. Yeah, I mean, this is, our workshops are about just, showing different people, different things that are out there available to them, different knowledge that's available to them. And hey, we want to see everybody have success. So we try to give you the best tools that we can help provide, whether it's through us or through someone else. It doesn't matter. If it gives you the tools to have success, that's what we want. So thank you so much again, and have a great afternoon, and we'll definitely talk soon.
Perfect. Thanks, Steve. Take care,
Okay.
everyone.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Bye.